So very good morning to everyone. Good morning, one and all. Warm welcome to the first class of our course, Neural Networks and Deep Learning. So today let us get started with the introduction to the course, and it's a 3 credit course. So we'll be having 3 lectures per week, and we have also given an extra hour for the project. So on Friday, usually we'll have 2 hour slot. So today let us start with the introduction. So I'll be introducing what is deep learning. It is just only an introduction, one line I will do about deep learning, but then we'll start with what is AI, and then what is machine learning, and then what is deep learning. Finally, we will come to know what is deep learning. So let us first start with AI. What is AI? Okay, now we are in the modern era, and then the technology is so advanced that we are surrounded by chatbots, virtual assistants like Alexa, Siri, and then self-driving cars are evolving by Tesla. So there are so many technological advancements going around the world around us. And then whether our future is in a grim light, or are we going to be in an utopian where the chatbots and the driverless cars will take away our jobs from the humans, and so what will be our future? So what we need to do is we have to evolve. We have to evolve in the for the growing needs of the future in the technology advancement. So we need to know the deep learning course, and also we need to master it so that the chatbots or the driverless cars or this Alexa or virtual assistants will be listening to us, and then we can make them to do whatever we want. So we have to know, start from the basics. So if you know what is AI, then it starts the history from 1950s or 40s. So basically AI is just a way of how the human activities can be automated by machines or computers. So it is just an imitation of the human activities by the machines. Okay, now in the 1950s, if you say, all of you might have heard about the IBM's Deep Blue computer, which defeated the chess game, the player in 1990s, earlier 1990s. So basically, all of you know chess is a strategy-based game. So you will have strategies to play. There are set of clear-cut instructions or rules or strategies to play the game. So if a computer has to play the game, then all those instruction rules has to be hard-coded in it to play the game. So initially, that set of strategy-based automation is called as symbolic AI, or we can also call it as expert systems. So those expert systems were ruling from 1950 to 80s, like as I said, like the Deep Blue, which plays the chess. So, but later what happened is, for a complex problem or like a fuzzy system where a decision has to be taken between cold and hot, somewhat cold or somewhat hot, or if it is an image classification problem or image segmentation problem or speech recognition problem or speaker identification problem. So for such complex and real life problems, the expert systems weren't providing much support, so they failed miserably. And then the machine learning evolved to handle those complex problems. And then now the data keeps increasing. So when the volume of data is increasing, the machine learning also started fading. So now the deep learning evolves. So now the deep learning will be handling the large volume of data for better classification or prediction problems. Okay, so that is the idea. And the AI encompasses, it is a wide concept. It encompasses the machine learning and deep learning, and machine learning is a subset of this. And then the machine learning encompasses deep learning, and deep learning is a subset of machine learning also. So this is the way in which it goes. Now if you see the traditional programming or the conventional way of programming, when you write a C program to find the sum of n numbers, what we generally do is We write a program that is a set of rules how the program has to get the input, calculate the sum of n numbers and display the output. So in that case, what you will do is you have a set of rules to be followed for the successful execution and to get the expected output of the program. So finally, you will give the input and the set of rules will yield you an output. So let us start like this in classical programming. So in the classical programming, you have the input and then the rules and then you get the output. So this is the traditional way of doing it. Now, when it comes to machine learning, it is slightly different from the way how it was done earlier. So what we do is in the machine learning concept, we will give the input and along with the input, we will give the output also. That means what is expected out of that model or your program finally. And then it gives a set of rules. It gives a set of rules. So basically, as I said, in case of AI, we are trying to make the machine learn and act according to the inputs that are given or according to the knowledge or exposure given to it. So based on the knowledge or the exposure provided, it starts acting. Okay. I will give some examples for this. So now when an input and an output are given, certain rules are generated and then this is an iterative concept. It doesn't end with just one go. It has to be iterated continuously so that the model or the machine gets learned properly. As the word machine learning says, the learning is a very important concept or a keyword. The learning is very important here. That is why we call it as machine learning. That means making the machine to learn. So what you are doing to make the machine to learn, that is what the technology or the technique approaches to make how to make the machine learn. Okay. So I'll give you some examples for that. This learning is otherwise called as training. Okay, this learning is also called as training. So now I will take some examples. Assume there is a small child which is say 2 years or 3 years old. Normally when a child is of 3 years old or 2 years old, it can just start speaking. So what we will generally do is at that particular stage, we can make the child to understand the colors and shapes. So let us take the concept of colors and shapes. I will take 3 primary colors, red, green and blue. And then some shapes like square, circle and triangle. Okay, let me take these colors and the shapes. Now, let us first start with colors. For the child, what I do is I show a circle. That means I take a ball uniformly for all the 3 colors. That means I take a red color ball, green color ball and a blue color ball. I take all these color balls and then I show it to the child. When I show it to the child, what I do is apart from visual data, apart from visual knowledge, what I'm doing is I'm giving the auditory knowledge also, auditory input also, so that it will associate the visual cue and also the auditory cue So when I show a red color ball and if I pronounce red, what it does is it associates the word red to the color red. Okay. So now what happens is if I show blue and if I say blue, then it will associate that tag, a label that is or a caption blue to the ball which is in blue color. Similarly for green and so on. Now what I do is I have used a red color. I have used a ball. Okay. Now this is the part of the learning, initial stage. This is the first stage of learning. Now what I do is let me go to the shapes. Okay. So now what I'll do is I will take a red color square, a red color circle and a red color triangle. Okay. I've taken uniformly only one color. Okay, for square, circle and a triangle. So now I show a square and then I pronounce it as a square. Okay, I pronounce it as a square. And now by seeing the visual cue, it knows that square means something which is four sides, four corners or vertices, and then they are connected, and then it associates the label square. And already it knows the color red, so it will associate that it is a red color square. So I am not teaching red once again, but already it knows red, so it will add. The child should add. If the child is very intelligent, inherently it should add the tag, it is a red color square. Okay, and then likewise for circle and triangle. So when I show a circle and then of the red color, then if I say it is a circle, then it should associate the word circle to the shape circle. Similarly for triangle. Now I have done the teaching part. Okay, I have taught my child with all the colors and shapes. Now what I do is, throughout the teaching of colors, I have used only the ball which is in circular shape, and throughout the teaching of shapes, I have used only the red color. Okay. So I've taken only these items for teaching. Now what I do is, I have done from my side my part, but I would like to know whether the child has learned properly or not. So how do I know whether the child has learned properly or not? So what I'll do is, I will first test it. I will first test it to know whether it has learned properly or not. So what I do is, I will show red, green and blue, all the three different colors of a shaped circle. I have earlier taught with circle only. So I will take the ball of all the three colors and I will show red, green and blue. I will ask the child what color it is. I can ask, if the child is able to speak, it can tell red, this is red. Or if I'm showing green, it should say green. If I'm showing blue, it should say blue. Or if I'm showing a red and asking, is it red or blue, then it should say red. If I'm giving a choice, it should say it is red. If I'm not giving a choice, if I'm asking what color it is, then it should say what is the color of the ball. Okay, so that is the way. If it is giving me the correct answer or choosing from the correct option, then I can say that, okay, I have done the training part, the child also has learned properly. Okay, fine. Now I have only given the training, okay, not my friend. So suppose my friend comes, okay, and my friend wants to, I'm happily telling my friend, see, look, my child, I have taught my child colors and shapes. Now you can also ask what color it is, what shape it is. Now my friend is coming. He doesn't know what color and what shape I have used for teaching colors and shapes. So my friend randomly picks up a square. My friend randomly picks up a square of the color green. Okay. And then he is asking what color it is, what shape it is. Suppose if it is asked, if my friend is choosing green and if he is putting a question regarding color and if he is showing a square, the child should say it is green only, because it has to associate the color with the tag name green. Okay, and though it is associating with the color red for the all the three shapes, it knows what is the shape of the square, but still it should say the color green. It should not tell it is a square, or it should not tell it is something else. So in whatever combination I have done the training, I will be giving the training with certain pattern and it would have learned accordingly. But then I have also tested. But then I have done the second step, what I do to find whether my child has learned properly or not. That is called validation. So after performing the training and validation, if I do a testing in any combination, the child should answer correctly with whatever combination of the shapes and the color. Okay, with any combination of shapes and color, it should tell, because when I teach the color, it has learned the color for circle, and when I taught the shapes, it has learned the shapes, as well as since it has already learned the colors, it should associate the color while learning the shape also. So when I test it for any color or any shape, it has to associate its knowledge, or it has to gain the knowledge from the exposure what has been given to it earlier, and based on that a collective effort it has to put and come up with an output what is being expected out of the question. Okay, so that way if you are giving learning process, it is actually called as the training. And here I am showing the object and then I am telling it is red, and I am telling it is square, it is blue, it is circle. So what I do is the input is the object that I am showing, and I am associating a visual cue and an auditory cue so that it knows this is the input and this is the name for that particular object. So the input and the output together I am giving as an input, and then it is learning, and in different permutations, combinations, it starts learning when I do the colors and when I do the shapes. So the learning process becomes its output. That means it starts giving out, or it starts learning or taking the representation of the shapes and colors by the input and the output what is being said or what is being given. Okay, so this is the basic idea or the simple idea of machine learning, how to make the machine learn. So basically you will be having three important keywords, or there are three different strategies or approaches for the learning or the training. So when you give the input and then the output, and then if you do the training, it will be a supervised learning or supervised training approach. And then if I'm just showing and I'm not telling anything, allowing the child to learn on its own, then it is unsupervised. And reinforcement is something different. Like I am giving the input and I'm also telling and I'm guiding the child so to learn. Suppose if it is learning in the proper manner, I am rewarding by a chocolate. If it is not learning, then I'm hitting. Then it understands that, okay, if I do it correctly, I am getting a chocolate. So I have to do in this direction. So it will proceed because of that. So that is called positive rewarding and negative rewarding. So based on the positive reward, the child starts learning in that direction, in that flow. So that is reinforcement learning. So in this subject, we will be discussing about the three kinds of learning with respect to the machine learning concept. Okay, so now let us now move on to deep learning. Okay, what does this deep refers to? Let us be very interactive. Can one of you tell me what does the deep says? Is it the depth of the learning that is called as deep learning? Can one of you say whether the deep refers to the depth of the learning? That is why it is called deep learning. Yes, anyone?
No, ma'am. Uh,
Okay,
Basically, in machine learning, we only have one computational input, but in deep learning, we'll have multiple.
yeah, fine. We will have multiple inputs. Yeah, that's right. Multiple inputs will be given. And then, okay, now what is this deep, that word refers to?
Maybe because in deep learning we mainly deal with the neural networks, and neural networks deal with the depth layers and intrication. Maybe that's what the deep in deep learning mean.
Yes, exactly. It is fully correct, 100% right. Very good. So, the learning actually, what happens is the representation of the data. Whenever we say the learning, how do I represent my data? That is very, the key factor in learning is the representation of data. Okay. The key factor in learning, or the thumb rule in learning, is actually how do I represent my data? Okay. So the representation of the data can be done at several levels. Okay. At a grosser level also I can do, or at a more finer and subtler level I can represent the data in such a way that my machine can do the learning. So if I want to improve the performance of the learning, then I can give the representation of the data in multiple levels. If I just give at a grosser level, or at a super super floor level, like at a top level, or if I provide with some abstraction, okay, with the top level, then it can only see, okay, what is this, and then, okay, this is this, fine. But then if I go at a more higher level, deeper level, and if I provide the representation of the data, then the knowledge that it gains will be more profound, and then it can also perform the classification or prediction with more accuracy. So how do I represent the data, and to what level, to what extent I perform the learning process? So with the kind of representation makes it more deep, and that is why it is called as deep. And generally this deep learning is associated only with neural networks, and in this subject we will be predominantly learning only about neural networks. Though the subject says neural networks and deep learning, we will be covering little bit of machine learning also. Okay, the word deep is associated only with neural networks, in the concept that the neural networks actually imitates the human brain, and then in the human brain all of us know there are neurons, and then multiple millions of neurons are there, and how they are connected, how data is given into the human brain, and then how information is passed, stored, and retrieved. There are so many processes behind which is going on in the brain. Okay, so in a similar way, in a machine, how do I store the data, and how do I extract the data, and how do I process the data for doing all these operations? Okay, so uh, in the neural network architecture, which we are going to study deeper in the future classes, we will be starting from the scratch. What is a neuron onwards? We will be building up our course. So, how many neurons we can have, and how many levels of neurons we can have, and in each level of neurons, how it is making effort, or how do I train or make my neural network architecture to understand the data, to learn the data, and then also I will be giving the output also. When I give input, I give output also. So together, how do I make my neural network model learn, understand, and then it has to give the output. So basically what I do is, okay, you are giving input and output, then why do you need the model once again to give the output? So what does it mean? So when I say the machine learning takes input and output, what it means is, when I give the input and output, it is learning, and then at any point of time in future, if I give an unknown data, it should give the correct result based on the knowledge it has gained. Like how I have explained using the colors and shapes. I have explained colors, using only the shape of a circle, and I have explained the shapes using red. But when my friend came and gave a yellow color ball or a blue color square, it has to identify a square and also a color. So based on the knowledge what it has gained, or based on the exposure that it has gained, it has to predict or give an outcome in the expected manner. It should not say, I have been trained only with red color shapes, I have been only trained with a circular color objects. It should not say that way at all. If that is the way it is predicting, then my learning process is a failure. Okay, so I have to do the learning, but then the model has to adapt to all the means of the learning in such a way that in any way I give an unknown data, and then it has to do the prediction or the classification. Okay, so that way, for making the representation and the learning process, just one neuron is not sufficient. You need more number of neurons depending on the number of inputs and then the outputs. So how many number of neurons I give in my, or I can use a customized architecture which I am building a neural network model. So in my model, how many neurons I want? It is like if you go to a pani puri shop or a chat shop, you will always tell, I buy some thoda sa meeta. So I will ask for more sweet or more spicy. It depends. He will have all the elements on his table. You will see he will have all the elements. The moment you give an order, he will start putting one by one, one by one. When he is adding the elements, you will tell thoda sa mirchi dalo. So salt come. So whatever you tell, he will do, right? And according to suit to your taste, he will give. Now when the next customer comes, he will ask more sweet, more spicy. It depends, more tangy. So but he has all the elements on his table, right? So according to each customer, he's doing a service with the same items, but then little more, little less, equal, balance. So whatever is the flavor that is required. So in the same manner, I have a model and I have the input. So whatever the output is required, I will get it out of it. And if I do it successfully, yes, I am a successful designer. Okay. So, and an architecture also. So that is the way it should be. Okay. So now let us see. So if you need more number of inputs, then I have so many neurons, and my learning takes more time or more levels. After reading or after learning a few things, I will feel that, okay, this is not required and this data is not required. I will ignore certain things. I will filter out from the knowledge what I learned. See, whatever knowledge, what you have learned in your kindergarten, in your lower class, based on that knowledge only you have gained intelligence and you have come here. Now, still you cannot think of whatever you have learned in your childhood, the alphabets only we are using throughout the life. The addition 1, 2, 3 only we are using, but now we are not learning that again, isn't it? But the knowledge we have gained, we are using and we are moving forward. So for that, later on, how do we drop out certain things? So those things we have to learn properly in this neural network. So how do we represent the neurons? How many neurons I have? How many levels? So the deep refers to the fact of number of levels of neural networks or the levels of neuron layers. The deep refers to number of layers. So the deep refers to number of layers in my neural network architecture. So we are going to discuss mainly about from the start what is a neuron and how information is stored and how information is passed, and then how it can be used for prediction, for classification, and then we will be looking at deep learning. So the architecture we'll discuss, and then there are varieties of deep learning like supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, and then long short-term memory, so many things. So all those will be discussed. And prior to starting off this neural network, we have some couple of topics which is a part of the machine learning. So like a linear regression, logistic regression, and then PCA, LDA, all those. So first we'll finish those parts, and then we'll move on to the actual neural network topic. Okay. So, and before going to this, I have to start with representation of data and then what is data. So let me take one example and then explain you what is data and how do we represent it, which is very important in machine learning. So far, any doubts, please be interactive. You please question me. I will be happy to answer. Okay, now let us take the example. Let me assume this is a very, very famous example, a very classical example in pattern recognition world. Okay, this is called a fish classification, and in the catchment area of fishes during the seasonal time, we will be catching the fishes, and then I want to classify those fishes into two broad categories. And in that catchment area, only two categories of fishes will be available. So at the time of catching fish, I don't have time to separate them apart, the two categories. So what I do is, from the catchment, I get all the fishes and then I have to now separate it out. So I want to automate this process. So there is a conveyor and I have a table here. Maybe I can call it as my decision table. And then I have two bins, and the two categories of fishes are salmon and sea bass. So I have one bin for salmon and another bin for sea bass. Okay. Now I have a camera here. I have a camera here at real time, and then I have a program. Maybe I would have deployed using Raspberry Pi or something. So I have my module. I have my Raspberry Pi module with a Pi camera on it, and I have fitted just above the table, which does the real-time classification. So what I do is, from the catchment area, I get all the fishes and I put all the fishes one by one here. So likewise, all the fishes I'm putting one by one. So it is going like this, and this conveyor is moving. So when the conveyor moves, this fish goes here to this particular decision making table. So from the camera, I look at those fishes, and then just by looking, how do I classify? So if I want to classify oranges and apples, how do I classify? If I want to classify banana, gooseberry, or pepper, or apple, orange, how do I classify? So each object will have their own characteristic features. So the color, let me list out a set of characteristic features. Color, texture, size, all right, and then shape, length, width, etc. We can have n number of features. I have listed few of the features in general. Now, if I assume my salmon and sea bass are of same color, then will I choose this color for discrimination?
No, ma'am.
Yes?
No, ma'am.
No, yes. That means if both the fishes are of same color, then I will not use this. Okay. And if both are rough, then I will not use. Suppose if salmon is very soft and silky, and if sea bass is very rough, and then if my algorithm can distinguish based on texture, then I can use this. And then size. If salmon is of small size and sea bass is of bigger size, then I can use this. And shape. And fishes, all of them are of same shape. Maybe slightly here and there will be some changes in shape. And if my algorithm is perfect in detecting the shapes with all the irregularities and exceptions, then I can include. And length and width. The size actually is a combination of the length, width, height, etc. So the size encompasses this length and width. So I can use the length and width as my primary features to differentiate. Now, out of all these features, let me take length and width as two primary concern features for differentiating. Okay, let this be one problem. So now what I'll do is, I take my length and I take my width. Let me assume I have three fishes, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Or let me take some more. Okay. So for each fish, I will be writing the length and width. Okay. Something like this. So I will draw a line here. I will draw a line here, and then if the length is less than or equal to 5, then those fishes are salmon. If the length is 6 and above, then those fishes are sea bass. And then if the width is only 3 or less than 3, it is say, let me say salmon here, and this is sea bass. Okay. So if the width is above 3 onwards, it is a sea bass fish. If I'm classifying based on that, okay, then I can write a program. Just it can, if you all will be learning image processing. So when I keep an fish over there on this plate, it will capture the image quickly. It has to measure the length and the width. Maybe it can perform the edge detection and segmentation of the object from the background and draw a boundary, the edges, and then it can quickly find the length and the width. It can measure, and based on my program, what I have written, if the length is less than this, and if the and remember the and condition, if the width is less than or equal to this is salmon, else it is a sea bass. It can do like that. Now suppose, and then it will open this particular gate and it will go to this bin, else it will open this gate. Assume there is a gate, it will go to this bin and packing. Now, for example, while there could be some errors. So suppose I assume the salmon fishes are very, very costly compared to the sea bass. Okay. Now, assume 1 or 2 pieces of salmon goes to the sea bass. The customer who buys sea bass will be extremely happy to have salmons there. Whereas, will the customers of salmon be happy to get couple of sea bass fishes over there? Definitely no, because they are paying more and they are getting a cheaper fish grade, isn't it? So there are two types of errors that are happening. Those errors we call it as type 1 error and type 2 errors. Okay. So in this case, this error is allowed, or in a sense, the customer will not complain for this type of error, though it is an error. But whereas in this category, in salmon can, if you find a sea bass fish which is of a lower grade of salmon, then it is a very what you say, catastrophic failure, you can say, because the customers will file a suit in USA. If something like this happens, they may file a suit and then it will become a law problem. So we have to be very extremely careful in all these classification problems, isn't it, in those scenarios. So how do we avoid those errors? So our classification model should be very accurate in doing this. So now how it has to classify this. So let us see the model, how it works. And before going into that, I will also tell about the other things, the color, shape. Let us take the color and shape. For example, I have fruits like orange, gooseberry and a pepper, say Indian gooseberry and the pepper. So all of them are in what shape? Circular, same. All of you know the shape of the gooseberry, shape of a pepper and shape of a orange. Now all the three are in the same shape, but then how they are different?
Sizes.
Size, exactly. Size and also color. But if I perform edge detection or segmentation, then I don't use for edge detection, I will be making all the RGB to gray value, and if I'm doing an edge detection, then my color doesn't makes any sense, or it is not a meaningful information required for my recognition of pepper or orange or a gooseberry. So what I'll do is, let me give an example. All of you know a sieve, how it will work. I have a sieve here and I pour all the three objects into that. A set of oranges, a handful of gooseberries and a spoonful of peppers. I'm putting it. Okay. Now, if my sieve size is of a shape which can pass the gooseberries and the pepper, then only the orange will be filtered here. The gooseberry and the pepper will flow through this and it will come out. And now in the sieve, I have a shape of the holes which can pass only the peppers, and the gooseberries will stand here and will settle down here, and finally the peppers will pass and it will settle down here. So it is a simple sieve concept at 3 levels, multi levels. I can do the sieving. First level, I take the orange out. The second level, I take the gooseberry out. In the third level, the pepper automatically gets classified. So in this case, I have 3 set of objects which are of same shape, and my color is irrelevant, and I don't bother about texture, and length and width is not applicable for circular objects. Let me assume that way. So in that case, I go with my size predominantly as an important feature. Whereas in case of my fishes, I go with the length and the width. Okay. So now here I have, yeah.
Okay, ma'am, I was telling that sieve cannot be might not work if when the order is also considered. Like order has to be considered. If oranges come first and then the pepper and gooseberries, then it won't work, no, ma'am. The order has to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So how do we put it? How do we put it in that? Suppose I assume a very big sieve and then I have place for the orange to settle down. Then in the rest of the holes, it can permit other items to pass through. So that way you can do. Or if I want to put see, when all the three are mixed, then how it can pass through? That is the way, or whatever. How or suppose if I take lemons only, two grades of lemons, two different sizes of lemons. If I want to classify, also I can do. So now, basically, what we are going to do is how do I classify? Okay, I'll take one more minute and then let us finish the session. If I take the fish classification problem, I take the length on one side and I take the width on the other side. And then for each fish in a two-dimensional coordinate system in a Cartesian representation, I have my x and y coordinates. Length I'm taking on the x and width I'm taking on the y. I am making a simple plot for if the length is 3 or length is 4 and then the width is 3. I will plot it here. And then if the for the sea bass, so for all the salmon comes here. I think the sea bass was more okay. Let me assume all the sea bass comes here and all the salmon fishes, when I plot it comes here. So I can draw a clear demarcation line here. Suppose occasionally a overgrown salmon can go here or a baby sea bass can come here. Okay. So in that case, how it will classify itself? So for that you have KNN classifier, which you will be studying in machine learning. So this kind of a scatter plot can be used and we draw a line. This line is called the margin. So based on the discrimination line, the objects will go that side and this side. So this is a feature space representation, and the objects are partitioned into two different classes. This is for a binary and I have taken only two features, length and width. Suppose if I take color or texture, that will be the third dimension. I have one more dimension, length, width and color. If I take texture, then one more dimension. If I take size or shape, another dimension. My dimension keeps adding. So my feature space becomes multi-dimension. Here my feature space is only two-dimension. So that way the representation knowledge grows. Okay. So let us stop with this now, and we will be meeting only in January 5th. January 4th, Monday we have a class. So let us get started with that. And before that, I would like to say in the introduction, I have given one slides. You can go through that. And I would like to tell about the deep learning, a machine developed by Google DeepMind. It has defeated the Go game world champion for several times. It has defeated recently last year. His name is Lee. I think all of you know him. The Go game is a very it is a board game. Go game is a board game, a strategy-based game like chess. But then it is a very traditional ancient board game originated in China over 3,000 years, and the world champion is Lee. The DeepMind developed by Google. It is called AlphaGo. It has won the player Lee, and you know one thing. For that particular game, there will be 10 to the power 370 combination of strategies possible. That is more than the number of atoms in the universe. So that many strategies are possible. And then this AlphaGo, that DeepMind AlphaGo developed by Google, has won the player, a human who have won several international championships, and it has won. That means you think how fast and how accurate a neural network architecture can be made. You can just browse it and find more information on that. So that's all. So let us end the session. If you have any doubts or anything, if you want to discuss, please message me or Jyotsna ma'am in the chat window.